This week at Ignite, I caught up with Steve Dispensa, who's a VP of Product for Enterprise Management and Windows Commercial. I asked Steve about some of the features coming to Intune Premium, including some of the technical details about how Endpoint Privilege Management works on Windows and how it compares to third-party solutions. Also, what challenges remote help solves for organizations and where Microsoft Tunnel fits into the picture. And I finished up by asking him what he sees as the main security and management differentiators in Windows 11. So, hi Steve, thanks for joining us today. Could you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do at Microsoft first?
Sure. So I'm the VP of Product for the Enterprise Endpoint Management business. So that includes Intune and Configuration Manager. And I also am responsible for Windows for commercial customers. And so I do product management for Windows as well.
Great. So there's been lots of exciting announcements at Ignite this week. Can you tell us a bit about the new Intune Premium suite? So what does it include and why is Microsoft releasing this now?
Yeah, it's so exciting. So we've been working for several years on a set of adjacent solutions to core management. So as I know you've seen, core management, and unified endpoint management has been sort of an explosively growing market over the last few years with the transition to hybrid work and the just proliferation of devices that IT departments have to manage. And in the process of this massive transition we've all gone through over the past few years, several sort of adjacent problems have arisen that are kind of aligned to management, but maybe outside the traditional scope of Intune and ConfigMan. So our customers were sort of bringing us these situations and these problems and saying, hey, does Microsoft have a solution in this space? The Intune Premium Suite is really the result of those conversations and that product development. We first spoke about it last April when we released Remote Help for Windows. We spoke about it in sort of a little more abstract way, but it's been really exciting at Ignite to really describe concretely what's coming and when, and just start the path forward to getting this thing GA'd.
Great. So what does this suite actually include?
So to begin with, of course, it will include Remote Help for Windows, which is a solution that allows help desks and IT pros to remotely control end user devices. It will also include Endpoint Privilege Management, which is a new solution that allows end users to run as standard user rather than as a local administrator on their Windows devices and still accomplish everything they need for their work. I can elaborate on that if you're interested. We will be building an additional, sort of an end-to-end application updating solution that will connect with Defender for Endpoint and will allow IT pros to go from sort of just knowing which applications need to be updated all the way through to pushing the updates to end user devices. We're building a cloud PKI service that will sort of take the existing workloads that our customers are running in Microsoft certificate services and upload those up-level those into a cloud managed service. And then we have some additional pieces that things like Intune Tunnel, which is a remote access solution we will now be supporting for MAM managed devices. So for devices that are not fully managed by IT, but rather that are only managed at the application level by IT, as well as some advanced analytics work that we'll be talking more about.
Great. Well, I am very interested actually in the endpoint management piece, so I'm going to come back to that in minutes. But before we talk about that in a little bit more detail, so all these pieces that make up the new premium suite, which I think is going to be available in March next year, are they going to be still available individually or as part of another plan, maybe for smaller businesses that can't quite stretch into premium?
Yeah, great question. They will. Each of these solutions will be available as a standalone in the same way that Intune itself is available. And then, we will be offering them also as a suite, and that'll have some sort of attractive economics around that at the suite level.
Okay. So I don't know if you're aware, but some of the changes that Microsoft made to Assist caused a little bit of a stir in the last year amongst the IT professionals. So could you tell us a little bit about what remote help actually offers beyond, I suppose, stronger authentication options over Quick Assist? What are the benefits of using remote help over what was already built into Windows?
Yeah, actually, it's a great question. We built remote help on the foundation of Quick Assist, and it was one of the reasons that we thought that this was a business that we wanted to get into. When we thought about the advanced management capabilities that go into Intune Premium, we thought, where does Microsoft kind of have a uniquely Microsoft point of view that we can bring to the table? And Quick Assist is certainly one of those places where it's built into the operating system securely and sort of at a low enough level that it really integrates perfectly cleanly into Windows. But of course, Quick Assist is just kind of the plumbing, if you will. There's so much more that you need to build an enterprise service out of it. And so what we've done with Quick Assist is we've added things like support for Azure Active Directory. So both the helper and the person requesting help can see through Azure AD who's on the other end of the channel, including their, address book photo and address book title and everything. So it feels like a very secure connection. We've done things like, because we know what the company's compliance policies are, we can tell the helper whether or not the device they're connecting into is compliant. And that's really valuable because if you find that, the device you're remoting into is out of policy, you want to be careful not to type secrets into that device as you're helping. Or you don't want to elevate to being a local administrator on that device if the device may be potentially compromised. And so again, that's the thing that Microsoft can do because we know the entire set of security policies and compliance policies that are supposed to be enforced on that endpoint. And so that's those are a couple of examples. There are also things like, certification for compliance policies. There's, the sort of the whole set of enterprise robustness that you'd expect out of an enterprise solution from Microsoft.
Is it true I heard or read somewhere that ServiceNow integration might be coming to remote help?
Yes, it is. Your information is good. We'll be taking our first steps at ServiceNow integration shortly. And actually, I think that's kind of a long-term growth area for us. So, the first things that we'll be talking about with ServiceNow will really be involving sort of allowing helpers to see tickets directly in the experience and vice versa, which is a great first step. I actually think there are several steps that you'll see from us after that. Don't have anything to announce today publicly other than watch this space.
Great. Okay, that's great to hear. Okay, so let's get on to endpoint privilege management because that's my favorite subject. I think this has been a long time coming to Windows, to be honest. That's my feeling about it. And I'm so glad to see Microsoft starting to do something in this space. That's absolutely great news. But what I wanted to know, is this tech, is it built into Windows, maybe the Enterprise Edition? Is it something that can be enabled by any MDM solution, or do you require an Intune license to be able to use it? How does that kind of all hang together from a technical perspective?
Yeah, great question. So when we think about the solutions that we wanted to invest in, we looked for places where, again, Microsoft kind of has a unique point of view, and this is another one of those cases where to do a privilege management and a local admin privilege management solution properly, you really need to be wired in deeply into the OS. It's well, let me just say it's a solution over the years, and it's a kind of integration over the years where third-party vendors have occasionally had trouble getting the security just right because it's such a sensitive operation. And so, this is when you say our customers have thought this is a long time coming. I think you're absolutely right. This is why they were kind of coming to us saying we're looking for a Microsoft solution here. And so, yes, we've built this into the core of Windows, into both Windows 11, and it's my expectation that we'll even bring this back to Windows 10. And the idea there is, to bring a complete solution to market to our customers to truly take a dependency on this solution. And, in terms of how it works, the flow is probably fairly intuitive for folks that have been through this before, but we allow a full set of administrative controls around whitelisting applications. You can say for a given application if it can elevate automatically with no sort of approval required, or if it requires an admin approval, or even just the user stating the reason for elevating. And so in addition to that, of course, it provides full auditing. And so it's great for, sort of compliance purposes, for forensics, et cetera, if there's ever an issue that pops up. And so, yeah, in terms of how it interacts, at the moment, this is positioned as a part of the Intune Premium suite, and it's a feature of Intune at this point.
Okay, great. So as I understand this, like current third-party solutions for endpoint privilege management, this doesn't require you to install a separate agent onto Windows. It will just work, essentially, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's, again, what the hooks that make this work are built into the Windows platform itself.
Mm-hmm. So a big plus, I think, for Microsoft solution.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Richard, or honestly, Russell, this is one of those scenarios where we've been thinking about this for many years because, as you know, local admin is kind of a long-standing attack surface reduction opportunity. And, I'm excited to see customers really start getting, putting local admin to rest forever. Nobody should be a local admin.
Yep. So, I mean, I realize this is obviously quite early days for Microsoft's endpoint management solution, and there are some mature third-party solutions out there, like probably Beyond Trust you're aware of. I don't want to give you too much of a hard time at launch, but I'm just a little bit interested in the future of this. And obviously what you've described today is already an absolutely fantastic start, in my opinion. But do you think there might be plans in the future to extend this endpoint privilege management capability to do things like a challenge response situation where the user's offline, for instance, and might need to elevate a process? Do you think that's something we might see in the future in as part of this product?
Yeah, maybe. So our plan is to build a complete solution for our customers. We think we're going to get out the door with EPM in a fairly complete scenario. We think that we'll see a good amount of adoption based on what we're hearing from customers. And certainly we're going to start getting requests from customers for additional scenario support, exactly like the one you mentioned. I think that's a great example. And like we always do, we'll take those and sort of, stack them and build them. And exactly what order and when, obviously, as you said, it's early days, and so we can't exactly commit at this point. But what I will say is, because it's a part of the Intune Premium suite, it really gives us at Microsoft the license to go really invest in these solutions. And so I expect this to get richer and richer over time.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. All right. Okay. So I could speak about endpoint privilege management all day, but I want to move on a little bit. So I don't know much about Microsoft Tunnel, and now it's been introduced Microsoft Tunnel for application management. Yeah. So obviously this is more than just a VPN, but could you explain to our viewers, what's the difference between this solution and just a VPN? Why would we deploy this solution?
Sure, absolutely. So, we came out with Tunnel, at least in preview, I think almost 2 years ago, for fully managed devices. And the idea was essentially a VPN that was tied to the local device management and allowed access into CorpNet for legacy resources. But of course, was tied to Azure Active Directory and participated in our zero trust architecture. And it was really as sort of minimal of a solution as you could get to solve that problem. That was our goal, which is wonderful for fully managed devices, but of course at that time didn't support personally owned devices, essentially devices that are managed only at the app level instead of the full device level. And that has become, as application management has become an incredibly common scenario for customers to deploy, those users still need access to those legacy applications on CorpNet. And of course, because these are generally personally owned devices that you're doing application management on, we certainly don't want to install a device-wide VPN for your personal iPhone or whatever. And so the solution to this problem is actually surprisingly complicated from an engineering perspective, which is why it took us longer to get out the door with it. But it's essentially a micro VPN solution that's fully connected to our zero trust architecture and fully connected to Azure AD. So that, for example, when a user starts an application that wants to access an on-premises resource, at that point, not before, not later, a tunnel is built under the hood, and the data traffic is routed back straight over to CorpNet and back into that application while not affecting the rest of the networking on the end user's device. This is really a solution because so many of our large customers, in fact, I would say all of our large customers, have these applications that are still running on premises, line of business applications, et cetera, and they're important for users to get their work done. And so, this is really the solution to that problem.
Okay, great. That's really interesting. I wasn't quite sure how all of that worked, but that's much clearer. So I heard that I think it was earlier this year. I think it was you that said, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that there is more investment going into the kind of on-premises config manager in terms of the team that's working on that product.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to know, are there plans to, because I know, I guess that technology is what, kind of 30 years old, something like this, the kind of stuff that it's based on. And, it's quite different. It works quite differently, obviously, from Intune in terms of, the ease of management, all that kind of stuff. So I wondered if there were any plans to make that technology, or to modernize that technology, make it a little bit easier to use or easier to implement.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, you're right. The ConfigMan code base goes back to the 90s. And I actually, prior to joining Microsoft, long prior to joining Microsoft, I have an MCSE certification that includes SMS 1.1, I think. So this is, it's, that was like early mid 90s. So this has been in market a long time. And actually, I think it's a testament to how well ConfigMan solved the problem for customers. It is, just has gigantic deployment around the world. And we view it as a strategic part of the platform. So most of our customers are moving to the cloud, and we expect them to continue over time. But move to the cloud, if you sort of double click on that, there still is an enormous amount of infrastructure on premises that needs managing, and we think we have the best tool in the industry for that. I also think there's a very interesting long-term future for ConfigMan in terms of better together scenarios where the cloud connects to the on-prem ConfigMan site and things work, and new value unlocks. So an example of that is, probably most of the management world is tired of hearing me talk about tenant attach at this point, but honestly, it's a 5-minute process that unlocks so much cloud-based power for ConfigMan, and we're continuing to invest in those hybrid cloud and ConfigMan scenarios. You'll see more of those as we enhance analytics coming over time, where ConfigMan has a unique point of view that really nothing else has. And so while we do believe, of course, that, like the rest of the industry, that the North Star is the cloud, we're proud of ConfigMan. We view it as an asset and a part of the overall solution.
Great. Well, we're almost out of time, but I do have just one important question that I'd like to ask you, if you don't mind. And it's something that I think a lot of IT pros have struggled with a little bit. So what are the main differentiators for Windows 11 for organizations in terms of management and security in your eyes? So what I'm really asking, I guess, is, why should businesses consider upgrading from Windows 10 to Windows 11?
Windows
Obviously,
11.
there are productivity, improvements and all the rest of it. But what about for IT?
Yeah. Okay. So if we move past the productivity pieces, which I do think are great, and I use 11 every day now, of course. From an IT perspective, there are two other pillars besides the experience that come into play. One is security, and I think that's incredibly important to keep telling that story, because Windows 11 has a requirement for a TPM 2.0 and for a modern processor with extensive virtualization capabilities. We can take a dependency on those items in the OS. And so, for example, most of our enterprises deploying 11 have VBS enabled by default. That creates very strong local separation of sensitive kernel data structures from code that is running by the user or potentially an attacker. The TPM anchors so many scenarios locally, including things like the ability to bind an identity access token directly to hardware so it can't be stolen and replayed somewhere else. And in fact, you may have seen recently, we started talking about a new capability of 11 that is, I think, the world's strongest phishing protection. Essentially, Windows 11 now has the capability to watch what the user is typing at the keyboard driver and kernel level. And if we see the user type their Microsoft password, we make sure that the network connection is to a Microsoft authentication server. And if it's to anything else in the world, it's a phish. And we can either stop it or at the very least warn the user, hey, you're doing the wrong thing here. This has an enormous amount of potential to stop phishing of corporate credentials only in Windows 11. So security is a big deal. There's more that I'll spare you the other 45 minutes of the security talk, but kind of like EPM, I'm with you. This is one of my favorite topics. But I also think management and total cost of ownership are a pretty important piece of the puzzle as well. And so that's where you get to things like Windows 11 has over 1,400 new cloud managed, so MDM managed policies that can be deployed. So if you're trying to make that move from an on-prem GP based infra into a cloud-based infra, 11 makes it that much easier for you. And we've done all the work on side by side so that for devices that don't support Windows 11, you can keep them on 10 and manage them in an entirely parallel, identical way. And you don't really have to know if you're targeting a 10 device or an 11 device, because the Intune and ConfigMan policies are designed to apply evenly and sort of semantically equivalently to both. So that's the short answer on 11. There's a lot there, and I'd encourage folks to go take a look.
Great. All right. Okay. Well, thank you again, Steve, for your time today, and looking forward to whatever else is coming up at Ignite this week.
It's going to be an exciting time. I can't wait.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Steve, and please let me know in the comments below what you think about Intune Premium and the new features that Microsoft is bringing to Windows security and management. If you found this video useful, I'd appreciate if you gave it a like, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, then of course don't forget to subscribe to the channel. But I'm going to leave you now with another video that you might find interesting on a new feature in Windows 11 called Smart App Control. But that's it from me today, and I'll see you next time.